Welcome to Humanley, the podcast providing allied health and integrative medicine practitioners with the most up-to-date, evidence-based and clinically relevant information. This podcast is a melting pot of ideas on health and well-being and does not replace the advice of your primary healthcare professional. Here's your host, Daniel Reuters.
Hello everyone and welcome to Humanley. My name is Daniel Reuters and today I'm joined by Maerz and Jennifer Osborne of the Bayleaf Wellness Clinic. Welcome along, Jen and Aaron. It's so nice to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Dan.
You. Thanks, Dan.
We were talking a couple of days ago and you brought to my attention that you've started a new clinic called Bayleaf Wellness down in Victoria. And Jen, you're the Chief Wellbeing Officer there, and Aaron, you're the Manager of Care and Wellbeing. And I was so thrilled to hear of the work that you're doing down there. So for our audience, would you be happy to introduce yourselves and talk to us about your new venture, Bayleaf Wellness?
Fantastic, Dan. We'd love that. We love talking about this because it's a real passion project for us. And thanks for the opportunity to come on and discuss it too, which is really important because collectively, myself and my business partner and Aaron, we've probably been in, Western medicine, complementary medicine, integrative medicine for well over 50 years in that space, either as clinicians or in the administrative face-to-face area, in clinics, which is fantastic. And we really wanted to talk to you about our experiences throughout that time and what led us to go it alone, particularly at the moment during a time where, we're undergoing COVID. We sort of felt that even though we'd started just on March in our startup, we felt that this was an important message and we're pleased to be able to share it with you. And hopefully people can get some ideas around where they want to go, because we really wanted to move from a disease model of health into more of a wellness one, because we know that obviously a well person with a chronic disease does better than an unwell person with a chronic disease. So for me, it's probably easiest to just tell you a little bit about my journey and then hand over to Aaron. I originally began my education in general nursing, one of the first uni-based students, obviously, to run through the system all those many years ago. And back then, obviously, as a general nurse, we were almost required to know, and fairly similar today, as much as doctors. The whole idea of nurse practitioner model was possibly going to come in. Doctors were spending more and more time, as specialists and moving up, and the nurses really had to be there on site and troubleshooting in real time. So, it involved a lot of pharmacology and anatomy and physiology and, clinical placement and, things that, really took us to the next level in terms of, patient diagnosis and what to flag and when to ring the specialist or the GP, etc. So that was straight out of high school. And then for me, did that for a number of years, obviously. And then just because of watching things over time, I do remember having a lot of reflection around, there's got to be something easier than this. Particularly back then, being an old school nurse, with I had this amazing charge nurse. She used to terrify the hell out of me. She used to come in and say, "Well, Jennifer, if I can't bounce a coin off your hospital corners, then you haven't made bed right." And she'd pull it all out. And to this day, by the way, I still make my bed that way. and it absolutely terrified me. But it was all about quotas. How many beds have you made? And quite often I was the one getting in trouble. Sitting with someone who was in the cancer or the oncology ward, holding their hand and just wanting to talk and give them a back rub. So obviously early on, and I really admire nurses to this day. I have many friends who are still in that profession. I think they're incredible saints. But I just wanted to get back to how did they get here? I was always interested in that, always bugging the surgeons, the doctors, interested in how disease was created. So I then went and had an interesting conversation with an aunt who said to me, well, you need to go into natural medicine. She was like the hippie in our family. And I'd come out of obviously quite a science-based family. My father was a nurse before me and, question everything. And I went to this open day. Back then it was called at the Melbourne College of Natural Medicine a very long time ago, and enrolled for homeopathy at the time, ended up doing naturopathy through that, and was really, really interested about the progression of disease, and particularly chronic disease and miasmatic theory. So looking at, particularly with Hahnemann, how as a doctor himself back in Germany hundreds of years ago had worked out that there was this progression of disease, and applying that over the top then of what I had seen and what I'd learned in my own formal medical training. I thought there's something really interesting in this. So I went out, graduated, ended up in clinical practice myself for a number of years, to great success, and like so many clinicians, just got burnt out towards the end, and certainly Bayleaf has been born out of particularly my journey, and obviously we'll get on to Aaron's and my business partner Diana, over the time where we felt that, in clinical practice, you absolutely are geared towards helping the patient, and you want to help them with that journey. So you're so engrossed in that, you're doing the research, you're helping them, you're listening to them, you're emailing them, you're seeing them in between times, you're checking in on them. It's absolutely a focus. And then there's so little time left for your business and marketing. And I've seen a lot of clinicians face burnout over the years. I got to the point where I was getting very tired myself, and I thought, wow, how do I fix this problem? And I thought, well, I need to go into education. Obviously, we need more complementary medicine practitioners out there. How can I do that? So I ended up lecturing in the science and bioscience department at, Australian College of Natural Medicine it then became, doing pathology and pathophysiology because of my medical background, which was fantastic. I loved it. And then obviously some complementary medicine subjects, foundations of natural medicine. I absolutely loved that class, and spent a wonderful time throughout those years teaching doctors and nurses who'd enrolled in the courses, who'd had similar journeys to myself, and then listening to, what they had to say about it. They felt that there was something more. And rather than just that, let's fix the symptoms, what's at the core of the problem that's going on, and how do we move our practice and contribute to more of a preventative wellness model, rather than let's just fixing the symptoms and, a bit what I call the old blood and bone shop at the end of it once that pathology has become quite serious. So that was a fantastic journey. I love teaching. I did it for many years. And then at some point in that career journey, because I wanted to contribute to getting more, complementary medicine therapists out there, I then moved across to operations. I had an incredible mentor at the time who was our CEO, who obviously saw something in me because I was very student-focused. And she said, I want you to move across to the dark side of operations, and which I did, and I loved, and I became involved in, the quality and the course accreditation, and ended up, looking after the online department and online learning and working with associations, finding out the standards. It was just fantastic. So my journey at Endeavour from woe to go, I think, was probably close to 17 years, overseeing clinics and being a campus manager, lecturing myself, really feeling excited about being a part in all of those students' journeys and seeing their successes and celebrating it, And I'm sure Aaron will talk about that because he's really passionate about that. And then, that journey, because we had a national footprint and 6 campuses nationally, took me pretty much all around Australia. And I went from Melbourne, I am Victorian based, to Brisbane for quite a number of years, and then down to Sydney at my last post, and ended up doing some time over at the Australian College of Physical Education and working with the Sydney Olympic Park business community, because that became one of the colleges that fell under who we were actually overseeing at the time, which was fantastic. So that was just a wonderful experience. And then obviously as time went on, I did a lot of reflection. I'd got to the top of being a director. I'd spent a lot of time there, and with an ageing family, certainly down in Victoria. My mother and my brother had started having babies at that time, and I thought, I don't want to be an absent daughter or aunt or sister. Probably time to think about moving back. So was absolutely lucky enough at this time to land my dream job in an incredibly large integrative medicine practice, the largest in Australia. And that was wonderful because I thought this is just the perfect combination of my medical background and my complementary background. I got to work with some incredibly fantastic, passionate, dedicated integrative medicine GPs and allied health professionals and complementary medicine professionals. Very chronic disease focused with, an IV clinic, and research based with some really progressive therapies in hyperbaric and hypothermia, and spent some time working there as within operations and the COO. And then towards the end of last year, lost my father, which I think we can all probably relate to when you lose, a really fundamental, part of who you are. And it really got me thinking, Dan, at this time, and it had been something that had been sitting in my mind for such a huge period of time on and off. And my very good friend Diana Capazzi, who's our senior naturopathic physician, had been saying to me for years and years, we actually met all those years ago, 25 years ago, we've known each other, kept saying, do you want to go into business together? Do you want to go into business together? I kept saying, no, I don't want to do that. And I had so much reflection around that time. And I remember the last conversation I had with my father, he said that he wanted me to live my best life. And I thought, wow, what's my best life? What's my best life? And I did so much reflection on perhaps the patient journey, on a clinician's journey. I mean, I saw these incredibly fantastic integrative medicine GPs who would spend hours with a patient and then try and, meet with them in between times and be everything, be a professional friend, give that guidance, give that support, give it that coaching perspective, and really left little time for much else. And then I heard the patient's story, which, Aaron particularly was, at the forefront of that. I've worked with him for many years across a number of businesses, and you hear the patient experience of, well, it's wonderful, I come, I feel fantastic for these couple of hours, and then I go home and there's no follow-up and there's no support and I have to wait to the next appointment. And I thought, there's got to be something better than this. And I suppose that's where Bayleaf Wellness was born, out of, probably a collective 50 years of frustrations and experience, and that real, we want to change the current model. How can we possibly come up with a model that's progressive, that's wellness focused, not disease focused, that really gives that support, not just to the patient, and puts them right at the centre of their care, but how can we support the clinician to do the best job that they know how to do? What can we take away from them? What can we add to them that will put them in the best possible space to do that? And the rest is history, Dan.
It's been an amazing journey for you to get to where you are, Aaron and Jen. And I know this is something that you've wanted to do for many years, but I think you are exactly where you are meant to be right now. And obviously 5 years ago wasn't the right time for you. It just so happened at the right time for all this to happen was at the beginning of a pandemic, which was obviously threw a bit of a spanner in the works for you.
True. But you know what? No better time, actually,
No better time, because when you're speaking your truth and you're following your dream and the thing that you are meant to be doing, it just seems to work out. And so far things seem to be going pretty good. So yeah, we've also got Aaron Maerz here today, and you're the wellness manager at Bayleaf, Aaron. So did you just want to talk a little bit about your journey to get to this point of starting this amazing clinic?
Absolutely. And I loved your point, Dan, about timing. And I think that, I think we're the sum of all of our experiences, and just listening back to Jen talk about her, her journey and what's brought her here. It's sometimes I forget those steps that we've taken and that's brought us here. For me, I started my sort of career in this field working in a medico-legal space. And, that's quite a little bit removed from what I'm currently doing. I was managing a fairly large medico-legal firm in Brisbane, and I was working with a lot of orthopedic surgeons and psychiatrists and a lot of specialists who were not treating patients, but they were examining patients for medico-legal reporting purposes, and I guess that's where it really piqued my interest in health in general and in medicine. From there, I went on to work at Endeavour College of Natural Health, and another keen passion of mine, of course, is education, and that's where Jennifer and I met, working for Endeavour. I started very humbly as a student advisor, and giving advice across the student services desk to many a student that needed advice on their subject selections and how to defer an exam, and what to do, when things had fallen apart in their personal lives and put their studies on hold. Or there was a whole raft of different scenarios that came up, and I fairly quickly found my feet in that sort of role, and I realized that I really loved that kind of work, and I loved helping people achieve their goals when it came to education. And I did work up through a few positions. I eventually became the national manager for student services, and that's when I was reporting to Jen. That's pretty much been the start of a wonderful, pretty magical working relationship and friendship. From that point on, I guess we just realized that we really clicked together, and from Endeavour, I did get to travel around the country quite a bit, working in that national role. I did get to all of the campuses, and that gave me a really great taste of what was happening in each state and whatnot. And I did actually move to Melbourne for Endeavour College, which it turned out to be wonderful. I've always loved Melbourne. I still live here now. That was meant to be a 6-month secondment that turned into, here I am 6 years later. But from Endeavour, I then followed Jen to the integrative medicine clinic that she spoke about as well. One of the beautiful things that, when you do click with another human being in a workplace, and they go on to do something fantastic and love what you do, is they often dangle a little carrot and incentivize you to come across and work with them again. I look, obviously I couldn't.
You never want to lose good people, Dan, and particularly if you know that they can fix a problem that you have beautifully, then you certainly want to keep them with you.
Yeah, so that meant that I left Endeavour after about 9 years. I think it was just shy of 10 years that I was at Endeavour College, and worked with Jen at the integrative medicine clinic as well. And I guess that's where, from working at Endeavour, where I was surrounded by people in the education space and naturopaths and nutritionists and homeopaths and acupuncturists and all of these brilliant practitioners, and being involved with the clinic space there, that I just started to realise that obviously there was a bit of a pendulum swing for me from one side of working in that medicine and health space with the orthopaedic surgeons, etc., to that natural health space as well. So for me to go from medico-legal to Endeavour College of Natural Health to then an integrative medical clinic, it just seemed to be that real beautiful marriage of natural therapies, complementary therapies, which are, of course, evidence-based, with more traditional, I suppose, what do you want to call it, Western medicine, GPs and psychiatrists and those sorts of practitioners, working with them again. So it was that really beautiful marriage of the two, which, as you know yourself, Dan, that's what, integrative medicine is. And I was there for about 2 years working alongside Jen. I was the business manager there, and I got a lot in that particular space from working with the practitioners directly, as Jen did. We got a lot of feedback. In particular, I got a lot of feedback from the patients as well, and I won't unpack that too far because Jen sort of spoke to it already. But there were a lot of patients that were going to that particular clinic for a lot of chronic health conditions, and they felt quite alone at the end of the day when they went home after their treatment. And again, that just got the wheels turning for Jen and I and Diana to think about how we could change that model. And again, that's sort of pretty much brought us up to speed. Of course, once again, I followed Jen's laugh down yet another corridor from Endeavour College to the integrative clinic to Bayleaf Wellness. And I just feel like, again, to speak to that idea of being the sum of your experiences and, and timing being, what it is, even in a pandemic, I just feel that I'm finally in a really wonderful space, and everything I love about that health, wellness, medical space has culminated. And so, yeah, that's pretty much me up to date, I guess, for now.
Yeah, it's so good to see the journey that you've been on. I've known both of you for many years, and we did actually all meet working at ACNM in Brisbane all those years ago. And when I spoke with you last week and you were telling me about your new clinic, it got me really excited because I've worked in many clinics across Australia, and it doesn't seem like there's very many doing what you're doing. And I was really, really impressed. So there's a couple of points that I sort of want to cover off on. One of those is the point that both of you have brought up about making sure the patient has got the care that they need. And I think quite often we do forget about the importance of providing ongoing care to our patients. Usually what will happen is the client will come in and they'll see their clinician, and then after that consultation is done, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind, and the patient may feel left alone. And I know in my own clinic, I've always tried to give 110% where possible. And one of the reasons for that is I remember a colleague of mine saying years ago that you want to treat each patient like a king, because each patient, if you treat them well, will stay with you for years, if not a lifetime. So it's my understanding that's the type of environment that you want to create at Bayleaf Wellness, right?
Absolutely, Dan. And I think that the reason, one of the fundamental drivers, at least for the three of us, Di, Aaron and myself included, and now our team that's growing because we're going through a recruitment phase at the moment because the demand is so huge for this kind of supportive care, is that the absolute passion with which complementary medicine therapists, allied health professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, integrative GPs, all of the people that we have cumulatively worked with over the years, there's never really been a time where I've questioned that passion or dedication. I know myself in clinical practice, for me, it would not, particularly in my early days, it would take nothing for me to go and spend 3 days researching one case to make sure that I was using the most latest research. I had the best access to therapies I could refer on if I needed to, and I really knew exactly what I was talking about to be able to give that advice. And I think that there's been so much pressure on clinicians to be a one-stop shop for everyone. And we know ourselves, and I've been in clinical practice, that's what you want to do. That's what drives you. That's your passion. I saw this at the National Institute of Integrative Medicine. Incredible, integrative GPs. We all want that. And then when we come home, there's obviously our family time and our personal time. And we all know, heal thyself and look after yourself. And self-care is the first place. But then, of course, there's the marketing of your business. There's the accounts. There's the running. There's the bookings. There's the invoicing. There's all of that other side that takes away. And then, the in-between of trying to give that support or professional friendship is what I like to call it, throughout those midpoints and between first appointment and next appointment. So for us, the Bayleaf model was very much about how do we fix that problem? How do we give the clinician the support, the time, the space, and the energy to be able to do what they want to do? And how do we look after the patient and build a real community of support networks and look at what that looks like for them, something that they can hook into. And the Bayleaf model particularly, we spent quite a lot of time working on that. I mean, one of the things that we do have, and you'll notice this from our website, is we don't have GP appointments up front. The primary practitioner is very much the naturopathic or nutritional medicine consult. We have a discovery call in that we spend some time chatting about what you need, and a very full wellbeing profile, including all of your case history, is taken before you come, because the integrative medicos that we do have are very much specialists in their area, whether it be hormonal health, gut health. They can certainly come in later. But we've also got what I call, what we love is wellbeing coaches. And those wellbeing coaches are in nutrition, lifestyle, positive psychology. And I like to think of those wellbeing coaches as, I like to call them the fulcrum, in between, the glue that holds everything together between the clinician and between the patient. And I love Bernard DeVoto's, the American historian, who is quite an outspoken defender of civil liberties. His definition of fulcrum is one that supplies capability for action. And I love that so much, because I think of the wellbeing coaches that we have who go in between those appointments. Sometimes it's a 15-minute checkup. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. How are you going? How can we work with you? Do you need me to go back to the GP, your holistic GP? Is your diet plan or nutrition plan working for you? Can we tweak something? What's realistic? Are you on track? How's your physical fitness? What support networks do you have in your area that we can tap into for you? Which has been a very big one, as you can imagine, in COVID, because, people are only confined to 5 kilometres within their space, particularly in Melbourne. And that community have come to a cooking class and invite our membership, and this is how you make a healthy breakfast, and all of that face-to-face interaction, which is so important in our field, we don't have access to at the moment. And even with the advent of telehealth, Bayleaf's grown so big now that we originally went into this as a Melbourne-based business, but we've got clinicians in Sydney working for us. So it's sort of broken down some of those barriers, meaning that we can provide that access and that support anywhere that we are within Australia and even international. We have, a Southeast Asia partnership. So when that can become a little bit more face-to-face, the model works very well in that, there's always a check-in. The GP's not receiving all of these emails. There's a collaborative case model where cases are discussed every week. We decide what's best, and the patient really is the focus of that care. And Aaron's role is so crucial to that, because all of that administrative work, which is so vitally important, and patient contact is taken away for the clinician as well. So it works very, very well for us under the current environment, and the feedback we're getting is you're doing something really great. I love the wellbeing coaches being that one that supplies capability for action. I think that's so fantastic, because they're in there providing that support and capability to enable the patient and individual to actually, feel activated and feel supported. And it's working really, really well for us.
Yeah, it's such a great message that you've got there, Jen. And one of the things I was thinking about as you were speaking was that, and this is obviously something that I say to my students all the time when I'm teaching, is when you go into clinical practice, it's 80% admin and marketing and networking and education and building relationships, right? It's 80% of that, and then 20% actually being a clinician. So it sounds to me like what you're trying to do here is to flip that on its head, where practitioners who are working at Bayleaf Wellness are now being 80% or even more clinician focused, and then reducing the admin time and the marketing time and things, so the clinicians can focus on what they do best.
Absolutely nailed it, Dan. And that's what we wanted, because, we obviously do have a lot of our colleagues and friends in this business. They all say the same thing. We take away the marketing. We take away the bookings. Aaron takes care of all of that. We have a pretty smart tech system. We don't even tend to get a huge amount of traffic via our phone line. Everything is online. It's very smart, tech-based in terms of the way that it's set up. That discovery call really ferries things, and we decide what we do once, that connection's been made. And the clinician can just focus on being a clinician, because you spend all this time and all this experience and study on doing what you love, and really no clinician goes into it without that in the back of their mind. We all want to help, and I've heard that universally. I don't hear any exception to that within our industry, and I love that. So for me, it was about giving them the opportunity to do professional developments. So, for example, what you're doing with Humanley is so important in this area, supporting them to go and learn and be and further their research and their education, and making sure that they feel like they have that support to then really just dig deep for the patient. And then on the other side, the patient actually learning from that experience in education, because there's quite a huge education component to obviously being a good clinician as well.
And I'll just jump in there too really quickly, because for the sort of work that I'm doing is very much occupying that space between the patient and the practitioner. So I'm working very closely with our patients and also working very closely with the clinicians, the practitioners. And to Jen's point, that idea of education is extremely relevant to both sides. So we're trying to educate, the patients about how this model works and how it benefits them. There's a lot of people out there that are already further down the track on their, education journey within this sort of health space, and that's wonderful. But we are getting a few people who are approaching us that perhaps don't understand why we don't give them instant access to a GP, and we've sort of flipped that particular model. And to speak on the other side of things with the practitioners, some of the newer practitioners that have come on board have been used to running their own, mini practices, or perhaps they consult for a couple of different places. And when they come on board with us, they've been quite surprised at, I guess, just how much of that that extra stuff that Jen, was just speaking to, the marketing, the administration, the follow-up, the check-ins, all of that stuff that can be taken away from them so that they can purely focus on their area of expertise, which is, focusing in on health outcomes for their patients. So, I just wanted to make sure I got that little point in, just because I am a real pivot point between those two different sides, the patients and the practitioners in the middle.
And I think too with COVID, Dan, particularly, is that a lot of people are asking so many more questions, and there's so much fake news out there. And I really enjoyed, I don't know if you know it, listening to Sarah Wilson on this. She had a particular article and was talking about, obviously she's in the wellbeing space, but talking about fake news and what was out there. And I think there's so many more questions, and we've moved from that model of, the doctor knows everything, guru mentality. We just follow what the doctor says. We take a pill. And certainly in the days of, now Google Doctor, I mean, we've had quite a few patient complaints over the years of, I could have just Google doctored that and got that advice, and which is incredibly disheartening if you're a clinician. But that educative process, because people are now more informed, they don't necessarily want that guru anymore. They want a support network. They want to understand. They want to be more educated. And that's what certainly our clientele are craving. Something as simple as, one of our wellbeing coaches, Michaela, this week posted 10 simple egg substitutes if you're vegan and allergic to eggs. Now, that might seem like a very simplistic thing, but, working exactly with your patients and saying substitute this and do that, and here's some recipes and this is what helps, and that support network is there throughout, because we do have, I think our commercial sales manager has an allergy to eggs. So, for him, the light's gone on. And, that's so simple. I can substitute this and that depending on the recipe. And it's such an easy thing to do that then the clinician's not so focused on doing these huge, so, we have some clinical nutritionists, obviously, a nutrition plan from a qualified nutrition coach. So, those kinds of things mean that there's this additional backup, which is exciting.
I've started a number of clinics over the years at various locations across Australia, and I would say that many clinicians would agree with me that starting a practice, even at the best of times, is not easy. Aaron, I've got a question for you, because I know that you've probably had quite a large part in this, but I want to know how you actually start a successful clinic in the middle of a pandemic and an economic crash. How do you do it?
Well, isn't that the $64 million question? I guess, one of the biggest things for us was already before COVID came in place, we were looking at the sort of model that we wanted to create. Look, quite a big part of that for us anyway was always about, as Jen mentioned earlier, the tech side of things. We wanted to make sure that we could empower our patients to take, quite a lot of control over their experience with us at the clinic. And by that, I mean, simple things like being able to have online appointments, video appointments, phone appointments, be able to book online, even things like for when we do those virtual appointments, we have a lot of payment options. That means that we can send a little link to the patients where they can pay via Apple Pay, or they can just pay instantly on their phone. And so we wanted to make things as easy as possible for our patients with that patient experience. And I guess just to kind of throw back to my experience working with students, our big focus when Jen and I were working in education was always about, students first and student centricity. And we've just kind of overlaid that same philosophy, I suppose, to the patient experience. So for us, I guess my point there is that the model that we had created was already a model that would be successful in or outside of a pandemic. And it just means that we have the structure in place to already support doing a lot of that online, online stuff, video, phone appointments and whatever. And always for us, the biggest focus is on the patient experience. So even if it is a virtual appointment for that patient, the role that I occupy dealing with that patient and making sure that, their booking's correct and that they've got the materials that they need, or they know what they need to bring, have with them to their video appointment. Whatever that is, I mean, it's about, really it does boil down to customer service. And we want to make sure that even as a virtual experience, that it's still a really great experience. So I suppose the sort of work that, we're doing, at least in the initial phases of a lot of the patients' experiences, don't necessarily need to be face-to-face. We've got some beautiful rooms in opposite Flinders Street Station. So we've got a beautiful CBD location. We can see patients face-to-face, which is great. But I guess during this pandemic, it's really... it has really forced a bit of change on people, and it's forced things like telehealth on a lot of patients, which necessarily isn't a bad thing. It's forced them to be comfortable with, a medical or a wellness patient experience in that online sort of space. And I guess I'm hoping I'm answering your question by saying all of that. How do you start a clinic in pandemic? And we did all the normal things that you would to open physical rooms. But I guess we're just blessed that already the model that we were working towards was just geared towards kind of a more virtual experience. And the pandemic has, if anything, taught our patients to be okay in that space. So our online space, we call it Clinic in the Cloud, and that's basically the telehealth version of our appointments. And look, the response has been really, really wonderful, and it's the beautiful thing that's helped us survive, I suppose, and thrive, is that our patient base isn't just limited to people here in Melbourne exclusively. And as Jen mentioned before, we've got a couple of practitioners all over the place, and Sydney, and we're aligned with a company in Southeast Asia, and we're in talks at the moment with a few practitioners that will help us out there. We've got a lot of people in regional Victoria that have just been quite thankful that we are set up the way that we are, because it's meant that they've been able to have the same level of access to healthcare as they were used to, I suppose. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope that sort of answers that question for you.
Yeah, it does perfectly, Aaron. Thank you. I'll put this out to both of you, so Jen and Aaron. How do we get more people interested in natural health? Because from what I've found, those that are interested in natural medicine are usually people who spent the majority of their life under the impression that when I get sick, I'm going to go to the doctor and they're going to give me the pill to make me better, and it's all good. I don't need to think about my diet or my lifestyle. I'm going to put it all in the hands of the expert as soon as something happens to me. Then you end up going to the doctor with this condition, and the person realizes that what they're being offered is no longer or not what they thought it was going to be. And it doesn't provide them with the answers or the results that they want. So they come and start looking for alternatives. And I think that's how a lot of people end up on the doorstep of natural medicine. But I want to know, is there a way that we can actually draw more people into being interested to work with integrative medical professionals and naturopaths and nutritionists and other allied health professionals? We don't have to let them go through that long journey to realize that natural medicine actually has something to offer. How do we attract more people towards it?
I'll jump in first. Obviously, the first thing that springs to mind for me is education, and I'll leave it to Jen to talk in a bit more technical language about other things. But for me, one of the huge drivers, and again to reference previous experience, education is so important, and that is definitely one of the pillars of the business that we are ramping up, as well as we want to make sure that there's a lot of material out there for our patients and prospective patients to have access to, just to really educate them in that particular space. And obviously, again, to speak to our experience, even though we've come from that natural health education place, one of the brilliant things is and of course, this firsthand, Dan, at Endeavour College, it's about research and evidence-based material. So that's very important to us as well. So I think it's about giving credibility to the sorts of therapies out there, and obviously research and the findings of those research activity certainly gives credibility. But yeah, for me, that's the really, really big point. And I mean, even as simple as something like social media for us, a big, we try and mix it up a little bit, but a big driver for us is to make sure that we are putting out some material that's going to land with people on different stages of their journey, I suppose. So whether you're just a beginner and you want to understand, the importance of, gut health, for want of a better, topic or whatever, that's quite topical at the moment. But we don't want to assume that our patients know everything at this point. So I guess that education, trying to appeal to all, people at all stages of that education process, from beginner to the more advanced. And again, just as something as simple as social media for us is a really good jumping off point. We have started a series of webinars as well. So we of course love to get our practitioners involved in. I mean, they are the subject matter experts, of course. So we want them to speak directly to patients or prospective patients about their areas of expertise. So we've got a webinar at the end of the month coming up as well. So that's the sort of thing, I guess, just even if someone follows us on social media, that they'll see, some hopefully really interesting, well-researched articles that, again, will land with people at different stages of their sort of education journey in this space. But for me, education, number one in terms of people, getting on board with any sort of integrative medicine and natural therapies.
Mm. Mm.
Aaron, sorry to interrupt, Jen. I just wanted to say that I think education is really important, and docere, or doctor as teacher, is a fundamental principle of what we do as therapists. Many of us forget that we're meant to actually educate our clients, and many of us, even when we do remember that, is we put that down on the list of priorities, probably a bit further down the list than it should be. When I am of the opinion that education is probably the most important aspect to health, because we're in this model at the moment where if you get sick, you go to your practitioner and they give you a pill for an ill. And it's very much the practitioner is the gateway to health. I, the patient, cannot get healthy unless I go to the person who's got the training to give me the pill that's going to make me better. But in reality, what actually happens is if we can re-educate our patients to live better, eat better, have a better social structure, get outside and exercise more, all the simple things. When they start doing that, their body will heal itself. And that's how people heal is through treating themselves better. We put a few things in motion and then we stand back and let the body do what it needs to do. So I completely agree with you there. It's really about re-education. And unfortunately, I think it can take a long time to re-educate people because they don't know the truth around what is right and what is wrong with health. It's such a minefield, isn't it?
It is. And Dan, it's really interesting because at Bayleaf we quite often refer to the 3 Ps, which is proactive, preventative, and partnership. And we like to be proactive. I think at the moment, particularly with COVID, there's so much information about comorbidity. If you already have an existing condition, if you're overweight, if you have high blood pressure, if you have a respiratory concern, we know that you won't do as well. And that's not just about COVID. That's about anything that comes along. You get something else and your immunity, your vital force, your health and wellness is diminished. And you have to be proactive, you have to be preventative. And that's why we want it to be more of a wellness model than a disease model. That doesn't mean that we don't have people who don't come and see us with chronic disease. Of course we do. We're probably 50% chronic disease, 50% preventative, particularly in some of the senior high-ranking execs who want to look after their health at the moment, very high-stressed positions. We have a burgeoning set of clientele that are coming through there, and that education in terms of being proactive is so important. So I suppose the only 2 little things that I would add to your question and Aaron's discussion about education is that I think that there's a huge opportunity at the moment as an industry to actually cross-collaborate. And I think that the more that we work together and we do good research and we encourage critical thinking, which is so important, where people actually do have the opportunity to work through the issues and know when they're looking at a good piece of research and when they're not. And there's some great organisations out there. So, for example, Penny Caldecott is doing amazing work as the head of AIMA, the Australian Integrative Medicine Association, and really bringing in that natural medicine focus to general practice. And, there's such great people out there doing great work. I think that all of us singing from the same songbook certainly goes a long way. And I think that one of the things that I found very interesting when you're talking about getting the information out there is that I really quite like the human stories, because obviously being in natural medicine for a huge part of our career, and integrative medicine, there's always been that focus. So obviously my colleagues and my friends and my family are big proponents of it, and that's my reality. One of the things that I love is the human story of our commercial sales manager, whom I absolutely adore. He tells this wonderful story, been in sales and marketing all of his life, thought he was a healthy guy, cycles a lot, eats really well, and it wasn't until he actually had an experience of, even something as basic as looking at a mineral analysis for him, a vitamin and mineral analysis in what he was lacking, and having that turned around and then noticing the difference and the weight loss that he achieved. It's an incredible story because I love him in that role because he questions me. He says, I'll say, oh yeah, but that's really easy. That people know this. And he'll go, do they? Do they really know it? And we always need that friction, that catalyst of saying, oh wow, just because I'm exposed to it and I know people who know about it doesn't mean that others are. And that education and research, and for us, when we do have the opportunity to go back to our beautiful little private suites in the city, to run those classes, to offer people this free education where they can come in, they're a regular of ours, we can provide them with that and give them real practical advice too. Here's what you do, here's how you mix this, here's that. And I think that's all that we can keep doing because and encourage people to critically think, because there is so much out there that's not necessarily good or factual or well researched at the moment.
You mentioned before that your clinic takes a bit of a different approach to the way it's treating patients. So you've got an integrative medicine clinic where you have GPs and naturopaths and nutritionists and a range of different practitioners working together. Why did you decide to use that model rather than just having a traditional naturopathy or nutrition practice?
Oh, that's a great question. Wow. That's really interesting, Dan. I think that's probably driven very solidly from my own personal experience. I think that, and being very science-based, seeing the benefit of both. I think that it's very, very important that we start to collaborate. I mean, if you get hit by a bus, your naturopath is not going to help. There are certain things that you really do need high-end medical advice for, predictive pathology testing. There are things that you really want to make sure that you're particularly exercising your duty of care to the patient by ensuring that you're crossing your T's, dotting your I's. You're making sure you've got the blood work. You're making sure that there's nothing there that's going to come up as a surprise. Now, I know from being in naturopathic education for many years that there's an incredible amount of work that goes into talking about scope of practice and referring on. I really wanted a one-stop shop, and I wanted there to be no gaps, because I felt that a referral, and we've got a psychologist as well, so I felt that the referral between this practice and this person and transferal of records and all of that just completely over-engineered the process. Once again, makes it very laborious and heavy for the patient who's like, oh God, I've got to get my records transferred, I've got to do this, I've got to go and see a new person. I really, and then there's a lot of time wasting on the phone and cross-collaboration with other clinicians, whereas we do that quite finitely in a case meeting once a week. So the hot issues are discussed. What's going on here? How can we help this? Everyone from around the country is ringing in. They're gaining advice, even if they're particularly not dealing with that particular patient. It's very much attentive to the moment, with those experts looking at that one case saying, yes, so there's no time delays, the patient feels incredibly supported, and they're not waiting, for an appointment over here 6 weeks away, and then the referral letter back, and all of that. It was just too much. And we all know when we've dealt with people who are chronically ill or who are on, at the very end of life, time is of the essence. You need, very agile support straight away. So that's, for me, why it was so important to have a myriad of clinicians in an integrative space, allied, complementary, psychs, psychologists, counsellors, wellbeing coaches, clinical nutritionists, physical therapists, general practitioners. Incredibly important. So once again, the patient gets that instant response and care that they need.
So that's a service that you're providing to your patients. I'm just trying to understand if this is correct in my mind. A client comes in and there's a service that they can get from Bayleaf Wellness where they'll have a team of people sitting down discussing their case, and they're basically getting 3 or 4 second opinions from that interaction with the different clinicians. So they're actually able to work out a much better approach for the patient, and then the individual practitioner goes back to that patient and implements that treatment. Is that what I'm understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the wellbeing coaches are checking in every week or that's obviously dependent on what the patient would prefer. They get to dictate that and choose how regular that happens. I know that generally they happen weekly for some of our more time poor senior executives. It's usually in late at night or something like that. The wellbeing coaches are quite agile, but absolutely, and they're going back with the questions. Obviously, they're operating within their scope of practice, but they're going back to the clinicians and saying, what about this? And those questions come straight back to the case meeting. And the clinician that is felt that is needed the most, obviously, is the primary clinician after we've built that wellness profile for them.
Such a great model. I'm so impressed with what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
We love it. And the feedback we're getting is, it was born out of years of frustration, Dan. Everything that we thought was wrong, we've really thought and probably been birthing this for years. For many conversations that the three of us have had, not only with each other, but also then with all of our other colleagues within the field. And the themes are universal from both the patients and the clinicians. And we really wanted to fix it. We'd be really excited if other people thought about this model moving forward so we could really make a change in healthcare in this country and become a well nation. That's really important to us, to think and work collaboratively and really make a difference moving forward. Because if this year's taught us anything, hopefully it's taught us that our healthcare is very, very important.
It's so important. We've never been sicker in the history of the human race than we are right now. And I think we forget that there is so much chronic disease. It is very, it's prolific in Australia, and many people don't understand that. And I think the model that you've got here where you're truly integrating and the client is benefiting from that integration is so wonderful, because there are integrative clinics out there where you can just go and see a naturopath at this integrative clinic, or you can just go and see a doctor at the integrative clinic. But you're providing a true integrative model, and I think we need more clinics like that in Australia. And with this amazing model that you've got, where do you see the clinic actually going in the next 5 years? You've obviously got some big dreams and aspirations for it.
World domination, Dan. we laugh at I think we always knew that. I think all of us we were always quietly confident about the model. We'd done a lot of polling and individual research and, competitor analysis, and really, we're talking about thousands and thousands of conversations with people over the years. So we were always quietly confident that we had something that was unique and different. Finding people who are aligned in that way is very, very important. And for us, we have quite a rigorous onboarding interview process, because we really need clinicians who are dedicated to the model, secondly, but firstly to the patient. And for it to work really, really well, we certainly, we've been inundated with people who've wanted to come on board, and we're quite stringent about what that looks like. Because of that, we do require that attendance at collaborative meetings. We do want our wellbeing coaches to really be involved and obviously learn from the clinicians, which is exciting. We've had some interns going through who are about to finish their studies. We're going to offer some more internships soon. We're really, passionate about building the industry. We've had some great experiences. I'm thinking of an incredible clinical director that I know who actually said at one point, and has been an integrative general practitioner for a very long time. I remember seeing him at a case conference to naturopaths saying, "You are the primary clinicians. We see people and we do the pathology and we try and do as much as we can, but at the end of the day, we let them go, and we hope that they go back to you and they work collaboratively on their preventative health." I loved that so much, but that's the kind of value system that we want within the Bayleaf model. And if you can't find it, which is why we're so passionate at the moment about growing the internships. I mean, we've got some general practitioners with us at the moment who have signed up to a mentoring program, who actually, one particular one is sensational. She's worked in ER for a very long time, and she said that when people come to the ER, they only have one question: am I going to live? And I love this conversation, because she said sometimes they won't, but the rest of the time you consider that you're taking the time to fix them up, knowing that they will go back out again, and then they'll come back in again, and they probably won't live, maybe on the second or third time. And she said, I want to get to the core of the problem. I no longer want to be at the end of it. I don't want to be at the omega. I want to be at the alpha. I want to be really affecting change in a preventative way. And I hear that from a lot of the GPs who've been out there practicing for so long, and they want to jump into more of an integrative, collaborative model. They appreciate, the 4 years, let's face it, undergraduate training that you get in naturopathy or nutrition. You've got equivalency of, nursing, general, nursing sciences. I mean, we're talking about incredibly well-educated people, not someone who's gone and done a 3-day nutrition course. It's really important to us that all of our clinicians value and respect the education and training and experience that they all have in their niche areas, complementary medicine and, integrative medicine or general practice combined. That's really important for us. And if we could affect some change there, Dan, which is why we're doing so much training and mentoring and building across all of our clinicians, and changing that model, then what I would really love to see, and I know that certainly Di and Aaron talk about this as well, we really want the healthcare model in Australia to change. And I suppose that's our driving force We want people to become well. We don't want an unhealthy nation. We want a well nation. And if we can contribute to that, and other people start doing the same thing, then I think that would have given all of our lives meaning. And that certainly is what drives us as a business. And I think, what do you think, Aaron, individually and professionally?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm totally on board with all that. I can't even add a single thing to that, Jen, in terms of, goals. And for me, at the core of everything, it's about outcomes for the patient and putting the patient first. So in terms of that model and where we see ourselves in the next 5 years, I would love to think that we've had some part in, contributing to a greater change in the way that healthcare is handled
absolutely
nationally. So absolutely, that's the goal.
And we're not precious about this. We want everyone to do it because we think it works. And if we're all doing it, I think that we could really affect some great change and make a difference.
It's one thing I have always thought about, this pauper mentality that many clinicians have. They're always so cagey and protective of their clients, and in some circumstances they don't want to refer clients out because they're scared of losing them. But when you guys are making such a integrative, caring, nurturing, safe environment for not only the patients but also the clinicians, you're probably going to find that practitioners are even happier to work with other practitioners, which is so important. There's so many clinicians out there who I think would really appreciate what you're trying to do here.
And I think the patients do too, Dan. It's like anything, in any sort of customer service environment, if those patients, if they know that they're getting the best care and they know that the people that they're working with, their clinicians, are very much actively working towards getting them healthy, and there isn't that protection of, this is my patient, or I don't want to, forward your case on to somebody else or whatever. I think just the very nature of people acting in the best interest of the patient will be, it is already being noticed by the patient. So whatever that means for us as a clinic, if that means that we have more organic referrals from word of mouth, however that works, then there's a groundswell already. And I know that sounds all very touchy-feely, but it's true. I just think if people are acting in the best interest of the patient and the patients are feeling it and they're getting results, then that in itself will help push what we're doing forward.
What's the best way for people to get in contact with you? You mentioned earlier that you've got webinars and things. Is that just for patients, or is that something that the general public can come to your website and access as well?
So we do both, Dan. We have, if you subscribe to the website and you become a subscriber, obviously you get very different updates to our usual public events. For our membership, a lot of the events that we run are free, and they're welcome to join us and come as part of that. So if we think that someone's really struggling with a particular aspect of health and we're putting something on, we love inviting them to come through. So certainly we offer that. On our social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, primarily, you can, which you can also access through the website. If you follow that, you'll know about all of the events that we're actually running. We're spending a lot of time at the moment focusing on our current clients and offering them and building a sense of community. I mean, we're very excited to get back to, a little bit of bricks and mortar, just because the space that we chose is so beautiful, with, kitchen and, cooking and, anything nutrition focused, or whether it be a yoga class or or a workshop with a psychologist on resilience and mental health, or, it's got this beautiful space. And I think we're all probably dying a little bit from that loss of connection. But certainly if you go through the website, you can do that. At the moment, we've got a recruitment drive for clinicians because we can't meet demand. So that ad's certainly on Facebook and I think LinkedIn. But generally, if you really had any questions, the easiest way to get us is via email, and that's info@mybayleaf.com.au with really any questions. Or if you're a patient or a prospective patient looking for services, you can certainly book a discovery call via the website, and we can run you through how we think we may or may not be able to help you, because it's really, really important to know that there are incredible clinicians in the field. We know so many of them, and if we feel that we're not the place, or we haven't got that skill set at the moment, which is why we're in a recruitment drive to actually manage that, then we'll certainly refer to who we believe is some of the best in the field. And we're very lucky to have those associations. So if we can help you in any way or point you in a direction, we'll certainly do so via that discovery call.
And just really quickly, Dan, to speak about that discovery call, we've set it up so that patients or prospective patients can book online as if it is an appointment. So they're usually 15-minute blocks. Because what we found is that someone might lodge an inquiry with us, and then, myself or the team will spend, the next 3 days trying to chase them down to actually find a good time to chat for 10, 15 minutes. So I guess one of the benefits of having that ability for the person inquiring to book it in is that they get to choose a time and a day that suits them. So again, I highly recommend anyone that wants to make any inquiries with us that they can do that and pick a time that works for them, whether it's on their lunch break or it's on, a day that they're not working or whatever it is. We don't mind, and then we call them at the chosen time. So that's probably been one of the best ways for people to get in touch. And of course, all of that that's all free of charge. Of course, we're more concerned about getting people funneled through to the right sort of practitioner in that first instance, just so that there's obviously not disappointment in terms of the sort of therapy that they head towards.
We've been talking about the website so much, and we haven't said the URL for the website. Do you want to share that?
Yes, please. Aren't you good? So please, anyone that's looking to find us, go to www.mybayleaf.com.au.
In the final stages of the discussion today, is there anything that you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up?
I think that the main thing for me is I'd want people to know that I'm always open to a discussion about the model or how this works. Myself and Aaron, be they any of those, patient, individual, client, clinician, the important thing is getting the message out there that this model does work, it can work. We've seen that happen. I know that compared to others, we've been in business relatively a small time, but if in some small way we could help discuss, get the issues out there, if you'd like to see anything more or hear from us, or you'd like a particular article, or you would like us to concentrate on something, we're more than happy to consider that, and certainly give you the benefit of our combined experience over the time that we've had, because I think the more people that are doing that and contributing to this kind of healthcare model, the better.
And for me, Dan, I guess in closing, I guess I'm just really grateful for the opportunity to kind of spruik about what we're doing. I hope that the passion that we have for health and wellness and what we're doing, and the model that we're working with. I hope that has sort of come across today. We're genuinely interested in helping people to be well, whatever that means for them. So, and again, just to reference, obviously the guests that you've had on the podcast so far, to be sort of scooped up and included in that pool of, amazing practitioners and researchers it's really complementary for us. So thanks for having us. But again, look, just happy to work collaboratively, as Jen says. We're open to ideas, and as long as it's all in the big picture end result of helping to move healthcare in Australia forward in a positive direction.
So if you want to get in contact with either Aaron or Jen or find out more about Bayleaf Wellness, you can head to their website, which is www.mybayleaf.com.au.
Or pop us an email. We're happy if you want to send an email to info@mybayleaf.com.au. You'll get one of us. Always happy to discuss anything that we've talked about today.
Fantastic. Thank you once again, Aaron and Jen. I really appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions or comments, head on over to humanley.com/podcast and join the discussion. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and become part of our growing community of like-minded health professionals. Until next time.